Hello everyone, and welcome back to some Heroes Hour. Today we're going to be playing on Orion's Belt with Lord of the Nun from DK faction, and then we're going to be playing on Hardcore with everything else default settings. So the Decay faction in a nutshell is all about turning enemy units killed into units for yourself. They're all about kind of like skeletons and zombies and ghouls, that type of thing. And then, like I said, they're about turning any units killed into units for your own side. I'm going to be doing a new trick that I didn't do in the last video, and that is going to be, I'm going to grab 2 different scouts, and then I'm going to be using these scouts anyways to scout around the map. But what you can do is scouts come with some free units, and you can just transfer them over onto your heroes. Your scouts aren't going to be fighting anyways, so you might as well trade over their units over and make your hero as strong as possible on turn 1. You could recruit even more scouts, but the cost of it starts to get too high. You'll need that money for other things instead. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we have any real good fights to take right off the bat. Oh, here's an easy fight. If I can get an easy fight or 2 done with until I get 1 level, then that will help out a lot. So the melee heroes of this faction tend to come with a skill that when you attack enemy units, you will put a debuff on them, and then when they're killed, they'll turn into units for yourself. So in this fight, I even gained more units than I lost, thanks to that passive. And then what makes this hero, in particular, so good for this race, or for this faction, I mean, is that he also starts with combat. Combat gives you kind of a cleave area on your melee attacks. So you'll see that whenever my hero is attacking units, he can infect a bunch of them at the same time. And this makes him very effective at converting units, especially early on. Unfortunately, it's hard to do full-on hero builds, where your hero kind of turns into the carry, aside from, like, your hero being a really good spellcaster. I think it is possible to do, but this hero doesn't have all the specific things needed to do it. I'll have to look into if there's a hero that has everything. I know in theory a way to make the hero extremely powerful, but this hero is going to kind of carry early on in terms of tanking and damage, and then later on we're going to have a way to just spawn so many units that the hero kind of gets outclassed by the amount of units on screen. So anyways, first of all, we're going to pick up Decay Warrior. This gives proficiency, which in this case, his proficient unit is a very powerful high-tier unit. So we'll get those for free somewhere around the end of week 1, most likely. And then more importantly even, this also gives the hero Life Leech during combat, which makes it so anytime he deals damage, he also heals back. It makes him a lot more durable. That way he can just kind of tank for a little bit longer in the early fights and make sure he infects as many units as possible. So next we're going to pick up the Soul Beacon, which is part of the main faction mechanic for this faction. This guy, I guess I can still go over here, it'll just take more movement, but I think I'll go here first now, since that other enemy neutral hero kind of moved in the way. But anyways, we'll pick up the Soul Transmuter. The Soul Beacon makes it where anytime you kill enemies, they will drop souls, and then the Soul Transmuter also unlocks a... sorry, wrong place. It unlocks another set of units that you can switch to, as well as allowing you to spend Mercury to instantly recruit some of these units. Otherwise, the a certain amount of souls are consumed per day to create free units for you. So not only are you getting free units from your hero when he battles in combat, but you also get some every day, as long as you're fighting often enough. So this should be a pretty easy fight, and they have a huge swarm of units, which... Watch my hero in this fight, and just watch how good the cleave is. Well, it's kind of hard to see what's going on right now, but a lot of the units are infected. Some of them wore off before I was able to get to them, but anyways, we still got not as good of gains as I thought that we would get on that one. A lot of them, the debuff ended up wearing off, and then also... Oh, these don't have where they retreat. There are some units that can retreat out of the battle, but these are terrified instead, so it's a little bit different. I thought maybe some of them retreated, but that wasn't the case. Next, we're going to be picking up the second level of combat. Combat is just going to give me more health and damage on my hero, and attack speed as well, but then most importantly is the increased attack range. Unfortunately, we can't keep going too far into hero power after this point. Heroes are pretty difficult to make like the main carry of your army, because having swarms of units is just so much better. So for that reason, we're not going to put any more points into combat or Bane, which would buff the hero. Next, we're going to go into Necromancy, which allows us to spawn even more units after every battle. Oh, we're getting even more EXP. This is going to be potentially a very fast run, with all the extra EXP boosts I'm getting. And then next, we'll pick up the Blood Cell. This will make it for where when you lose units, your skeletons and bone guards get a little bit stronger. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but we're going to be losing units anyways, so we might as well get some kind of power boost from it. And then it's also required just for like building requirements to get what we want next. Next, we're going to pick up the Haunt for some extra units. I like grabbing the Death Seekers because they have the Immortal tag on them, where they basically go into hibernation instead of dying, and then if they live through that hibernation phase, then they're they survive instead of dying like they would normally. Our hero got stuck behind terrain there, which is a little unfortunate, but I think we're still gaining more than we're losing in this battle. And now we can use our Necromancy to recruit some extra units. I guess I probably just want to grab, for now, whatever gives me the highest quantity of units, because that'll be useful later. Next, we're going to grab Mana Drain. Necromancy requires you to spend mana to use, but then Mana Drain makes it where when enemies die during combat, you have a chance to get mana back. So you can pretty much endlessly fuel... Wow, we're getting so many EXP drops. That is so nice. But anyways, you can use Necromancy plus Mana Drain to endlessly fuel Necromancy, as long as you're not casting a bunch of spells. Which, if you're playing one of the ranged heroes instead of one of the melee heroes, you'll need to be casting spells a lot more often, because that's how ranged units spread the debuff, whereas the melee units, or the melee heroes, spread it through basic attacks. The ranged heroes will spread it through using spells. I pick up the Tomb of Silence next. Gives extra skeletons and bone guards each week, and then also gives more mercury, so I can spend on just recruiting extra units. This also unlocks another set of units I can pick from, but I want I want to take whatever has bone shooters in it, because just having a strong backline is going to be good with the amount of swarms of units we have in front of everything. Alright, next thing I should probably do is start picking up some of these clues for the hidden treasure. I don't ever need to have this, but it's always nice to have, and it looks like it's somewhere in this area. Let's go ahead and take on this fight. It's much better to take these fights instead of skipping them. I say that just kind of as a general rule, but especially when you're playing Decay Faction, because if I don't take the fight, it won't apply the passive of me being able to debuff enemies and then turn them into our own units. So you will lose out very heavily if you skip the fights. We actually even got a pretty higher tier unit. These bone worms are what you get for free, by the way, when you take the... oh, what's it called? When you take the Decay Warrior to get some proficiency, you get flying bone worms that are a power 26 unit. For reference, if I was to build that up, I would need to build all the way up to here in the town, which would require 3 more commercial buildings. You get these units so early by taking that early on, and it just... that along with the hero itself being pretty powerful, and then being able to recruit so many units quickly, gives you a very, very strong start. For now, I'm going to pick up the fort, though, so I can recruit even more units. I'm going to put it on the skeleton, because we just want as much quantity of units as possible. Quality of units does not matter right now, which will make sense pretty soon. Next, we're going to start going into the Carnage skill tree. The Carnage tree makes it where it teaches you blood spells, but those aren't as important. The more important part is that the hero will gain health and a temporary damage buff whenever any of their units die during combat. So this is going to help buff up our hero, make him last a lot longer throughout the fight. But then the real important thing is going to come from one of these sub-skills that we're going to get next level up. Do you have movement on you? I'm gonna have him move down and then dig up the treasure. Digging up the treasure takes a pretty decent chunk of your movement out, and then also stuff like picking up gold and resources takes up extra movement. So I want to do all that stuff on the scout if he's close, rather than doing that on my main hero. So the rest of the things I buy from the building planner doesn't really actually matter at this point. We've gotten almost in one more level up, we'll have everything set up to be able to beat the game. Upgrade Center is never a bad idea. Guild of Mages is never a bad idea. Especially, you want to get Guild of Mages before you leave to kind of go on your final push. That way, if any of the enemy heroes get past you, you can just town portal back to your base. And remember to periodically come back to your base and soul beacon some stuff. Oh, that brings up another good point that I should talk about. Do I actually have a mercury mine? Yes, I have an alchemy lab here. So one mechanic that you can do in this game is that you want to get a scout close to one of your mines. Hopefully this is in range. Let's see. Yes. Okay, so there's a camping feature which makes it where you get extra attack and defense and mana regen, but the important thing for scouts is that you can camp near your resource buildings in order to increase their output. So this is just going to make sure I have enough Mercury to always be using it on the souls. So now what we're going to do is pick up a neat little skill called Blood Warping. After combat, allows the hero to transform some of their basic units into elite creatures. So now what we're taking is we have quantity from Bane creating units constantly, along with combat to spread Bane as far as possible. That creates a bunch of free units for us, and then we have Necromancy getting fed off of Mana Drain, so we always have mana, creating a bunch of free units. And with Blood Warping, we're turning all of this quantity into high quality units as well. So we are about to just become insanely powerful over the next few fights that we take. And then one of the last things we're going to pick up is Coil of the Dead. When your units deal fatal damage to an enemy, they also have a chance to instantly kill other enemies that are low on health. This, combined with all the high tier units that we're about to get, is just going to, like, massacre even huge armies that we fight. The Death Coil skill is so strong. So here we have our first example of Blood Warping rocking, and you can see I turned this one measly skeleton into a Thanatos, which is one of the highest tier units, if not the highest tier unit that this faction can get. We go from a 2 power unit all the way up to a 28 power unit. It is insane. And then we're just going to go for Carnage 2 and Blood Warping 2 to round out the build. You could go anything else after Death Coil, but getting Blood Warping 2 helps out things. So yeah, for reference, I would have to get all the way up to 3 more commercial buildings to even be able to recruit these. The Thanatos is the upgraded version of the Bone Worm, I believe. So we're getting these tier of units just for free. So we just came out of a pretty big battle where I lost a lot of units. The way that Blood Warping works is that the amount of units you can upgrade depends on how many you kill and how many you lose in the battle. So if you're just doing a bunch of small battles, you probably won't see it activate that often. But once you start doing some real big battles, you'll get huge gains, like 3 skeletons into 3 Thanatos. It is insanely powerful how good Blood Warping is, especially when you have an endless cycle of it from things like Necromancy. I'm hoping I can get at least a couple more Thanatos by the time I hit the enemy faction, but we are very close to them. Also in this fight, you can see the Death Coil proccing a lot. It's kind of like a purple chain lightning effect that goes between enemies. So now we'll pick up Blood Warping 2, and then after that point you can go anything else in the build. Going into Necromancy 2 is definitely not a bad idea. You could go into more Bane or Combat if you really wanted to. Like I said, the hero can get one-shot pretty easily. But if you just want to make the hero as strong as possible, that's definitely something you can do. By this point, you're basically strong enough that as long as you get enough Blood Warping procs before you go up to the enemy faction, you should be fine. Honestly, even just with the army I have right now, I might be able to beat them, but I would rather... Wow, we have a Lynx into a Seraph, which is a 30-plus power unit, so that's a very, very good trade-off, you can see, obviously. So let's go back to the town, probably for the last time, and then we'll dump all of our Mercury, and you can see how much just how many free units I get out of it. Oh, that looks so weird, having them all destacked like that. So 68 free units, and then, or 68 free bone shooters and 21 bone Lyats. If I was paying more attention to my town, I could build up to get the Soul Siphon, which will double the rate of the Soul Beacon, but it's pretty much overkill at this point. I don't need to do that. Alright, so I picked up this town up here for some extra units, and then got units from the free daily structures, or the free weekly structures over here, and then I got some from the Soul Beacon. I could get a little more from here, but it's just going to take them way too long to actually make it to the hero at this point. But anyways, you can see that I've got a pretty massive army built up, especially for just being at mid-week 3. And it's actually to the point of where my army, at least in size, is pretty comparable to theirs. I think they probably still have some... Well, even in terms of unit tier, because usually what happens is the enemies will just get really high tier units early on. But even with me having the free Thanatos from Blood Warping and Proficiency, I actually have pretty high units as well as just having the huge quantity that they get. So now, with Blood Warping, there's 2 spells you can use when you're in your more difficult fights. These don't cost any mana, so they won't mess with Necromancy, and they'll just have a 2-day cooldown. Shadow of Blood will create a clone of your hero, and then Living Blood creates a tank unit for you, and then also, what was the other thing? I was thinking there was some mechanic with the blood golems where when your units die, the blood golems and your hero get healed. But I'm not sure where I saw that. This fight is actually a little bit closer than I thought it would be, but losing this many units isn't actually too terrible of a thing, and you'll see why after this fight ends. So in this fight we actually lost 658 power. Did we actually have double their strength in terms of army power? That is surprising. But let's see what happens with Blood Warping now. 7 Bone Shooters into 7 Thanatos. I think we definitely came out on the high end of that fight. I'll just go ahead and pick up Carnage 3. No particular reason. It'll keep the hero alive and make him stronger, but at this point, we've already beaten their main hero, so we will most likely steamroll through the rest of their base. Their other heroes aren't going to be nearly as strong as their main hero early on. It's just they have one very powerful hero that, if you're not strong enough, fast enough, that hero will come and take your base. And there's pretty much no recovering from things if you lose the first battle with their main hero. You just don't have time to build up in a lot of cases. So it kind of sucks that in the high difficulties, it really comes down to just if you can win a single battle or not. But I'm not sure. It's hard to balance the AI around how powerful of builds that the player has. Alright, a little bit faster than my last one. I think my last one was 1 or 2 days slower. I think I honestly could have even went out and taken the enemy faster, but I wanted to play it safe and get maybe 1 or 2 more blood warping procs. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Let me go back and just give one last explanation of... So the main thing that makes this work is that the hero starts with both Bane and Combat. Bane inflicts enemies with a debuff every time you hit them, and makes them turn into your own units after the battle. And then what Combat does is make it where the enemy has a huge attack range, so he's able to very easily both be like a hard carry for the early battles, as well as just inflicting Bane on as many units as possible. And then after that, you can go for Necromancy and Mana Drain to summon even more units, and then to top things off, you go for Carnage and Blood Warping to turn all of your quantity of units into very strong units. And then basically, once you get things set up, and you get a couple I cannot say that word. Blood Warping procs off, your army just gets so powerful that you can steamroll through things with high-level or high-tier units that you wouldn't normally have that early. Alright, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.